We are completely changing the topic now, in the sense that we spent almost 2 days speaking about technologies, regulations, legal aspects, current framework, current regulation framework. Now we are changing the perspective in the sense that we are looking into the future. In this panel, we are looking at long-term and innovative research. In particular, we are talking about SESAR WPE projects. You know that WPE is the work package of SESAR, which is devoted to long-term and innovative research. And the projects that are funded by Eurocontrol on behalf of the SJU within this work package have the characteristic that they address the long-term and innovative research, but they also target to produce products that can be applicable in middle term. So they are particularly challenging projects, and since in the Alias project we are also questioning if the introduction of new automated technologies, new improvements in this environment could, in a sense, question the legal framework. We are now investigating with the projects that are performing long-term and innovative research if they are facing legal issues, which kind of legal issues, how they are managing those kind of issues in their projects, and if they are maybe finding that those issues could be at a certain point of their project a showstopper for them. So, very honestly, this was the intention. We sent a call for participation to 40 projects that have been funded by Eurocontrol into separate calls. 18 of them are already closed, 22 are currently in progress, and out of the 40 projects, just 2 of them said that they are facing legal issues. Most of the others said that for them it's too early. So they said probably in the future, when the technology will be more mature, there will be a point where it will be important to discuss legal issues. At the moment, for us, it's too early. For the 2 projects that are represented today here, the situation is different. They both replied that they identified some legal issues, and now they are here today with us to present those legal issues. And this panel has been organized in a different way than the previous one, in the sense they will present their project, and at the end we'll ask for your help, in the sense that their presentations will finish with a number of open questions on legal issues that they opened in their project, but were not yet able to answer. So if possible, they are asking you to support them in finding answers or giving information that could be useful for them. The 2 projects that will be presented today are ProGA, which stand for Probabilistic 4D Trajectories of Light General Aviation Operation. So this is a project which is developing a decision support tool for general aviation. And this project will be presented by my colleague Damiano Taurino. And the other project is Secure Data Cloud, that is represented by Vaishali Mirchandani. She's from a company which is called Team and Cloud, but is here representing Inaxis. So I leave the floor to Vaishali that will present the project to you.
Thank you, Paola, for the introduction, and thank you to the Alias Conference for inviting us here to present our doubts. And thank you all of you for staying to the last panel to solve these doubts we have. During the presentation, I'll be talking about our project, Secure Data Cloud, and the legal challenges we think we might face if we go live at any point. It's an innovation project, so it's still in books, really starting, so it would be a bit more future challenges. So to do so, I would like to talk about the project, the technology we use to implement the project, and we based the whole project in actually implementing real case studies, which I would like to present. The Secure Data Cloud project is part of Work Package E of the SESAR joint undertaking. We are doing a long-term and innovative research during a 24-month period. The project is a joint venture between 4 participants. We've got the Inaxis Research Institute, which is a private research institute with experience in activities in area of information management and aviation. And they bring to the project their experience along with a channel to easily spread all the results we obtained to the WPE and the SESAR community. We've got the Istanbul Technical University, which provide the academic expertise and knowledge in air transport and ATM. We've got the Turkish General Directorate of State Airports Authority that manage the airport in Turkey and the air traffic service and its control in Turkish airspace. And they provide the point of view of a real stakeholder. And finally, we got Team and Cloud, which is the research, development, and innovation group of branch of the Delenium Group, which is a Spanish IT company with experience in cloud development, in web development, and things like that. So the main objective of Secure Data Cloud project is to research and look for innovative solutions for air transport and ATM problems, which need a high level of private data sharing. And to do so, we use secure multi-party computation in the cloud. I will get to what's secure multi-party computation in following slides. The project is divided in 4 work packages. The first one, we analyzed and selected real-life business cases that could be solved using secure multi-party computation, such as CO2 allowance trading, pilots ranking, or slot trading. In work package 2, which is where we are right now, we've begun developing the solution in a control framework and a closed space. We have pseudo-real data, but it's more in a controlled level. And work package 3, we will be moving this control implementation to an execution environment. And then we've got work package 4, which is complete work package from beginning to end. That's dissemination. So secure multi-party computation. It sounds fancy. It's really easy. I'll try and get to it. You've got here the technical definition of what it is. It says it's a set of techniques and algorithms that allow 2 or more non-mutually trusted parties to perform some kind of computation over a data set while keeping the respective information private. Don't get scared. I'll try to give some examples to make it a bit more understandable. The important part here is that each party, firstly, they're non-trusted parties. Secondly, the only thing they come to know is the output of the computation and any other information they could infer from their own inputs. So, as I said, let me put a couple of examples. You've got electronic voting, say 30, 40, 50 parties that want to vote a yes, no. Obviously, no one wants to tell anyone else what they're voting, so they could use secure multi-party computation. The bidding or an auction where bidders do not want to give their bidding prizes. Rankings, as in in terms of fuel efficiency, the airlines that want to be ranked. So they do not want to share their business details. In this case, it would be the weight at takeoff. And statistics is an easy example. In a classroom, students want to know what's the, sorry, the maximum score, the average, but none of them want to actually give their grades to the rest of the students. So the traditional way to do this would be to look for a trusted third party that everyone confides in and would take all the input, the different kind of input, and would do the computation, would get the result of the votes, of the ranking, or whatever it is, and send the result back to each of the parties. But obviously, finding this trusted third party isn't that easy. So basically, secure multi-party computation substitutes this trusted third party with a computing engine that does everything for it. It takes the secrets that each party inputs, it encrypts them, it computes in a non-trivial way, and it sends results back to the parties that are involved. So that's it. That's secure multi-party computation. As I explained, our project is based on case studies, and we've chosen out of the 20 case studies we researched at the beginning, we chose 2 to actually implement, which is slot trading, that's an auction process, and delay reports, which is a statistical benchmarking process. So slot trading, as I said, is a secure auction process in which the auctioneer is the secure multi-party computation engine. All participants are semi-honest. When we speak of semi-honest parties, it's participants that are going to follow the rules, are going to obey the protocol, are going to do everything as the book says, but if they find any loophole in the whole system, they're going to try and access any other data they could get. It's used for primary and secondary slot trading markets, and we can use it for transactions in the strategic and operational trading. Operation trading would be what we call the dynamic landing queuing. And that's a whole picture of how it works. So you got 3 different areas. You got the premises of each party, you've got the cloud where the engine is, and we've got there something or someone that we've called referee. It's one of the questions that will come later on. Basically, you input the data in your software that's in your premises. You got a small library you got a library that takes that data and chops it up in little pieces that are called secret shares. Those shares are moved from your premises into the cloud using secret share protocol. The engine takes those shares, does its magic, we call it that way, and it sends a result back. It can send it only to an external referee, or it could send it to each of the participants in the auction in this case. And the second case study is the analysis of delay report. It's a benchmarking process in which, for a given table, which we consider it a route plus a time window, say Monday to Friday or whatever wants to be analyzed, and each participant would input the minutes of delay that each cause would have. So you got different participants that have different views of the cause of a delay, but it would be a way to take those delays and do statistical calculations of median, standard deviation, and stuff like that to give a bit of a better result than what we have right now. So that's, again, the whole picture. Basically, it's the same. You input data, you pick it up, you cut it into pieces, you compute, and you send the result. So after learning a bit about what we do, we can present actually the legal challenges we think would appear in a real life scenario. To begin with, we've been listening to it these 2 days. We're doing innovation. Innovation has legal challenges inherent to them. You know, who's to blame if something fails in the go-live stage? You know, if anyone has done any coding here, there's one thing we say is you can never test something for it to be 100% accurate. There is always a little possibility of things to go wrong because it's basically impossible to have that certainty. So should we blame the developers, the testers, quality assurance, the authorizing party? It's a bit of mess there. The second legal challenges we have tackled is the ones based on the technology we used. As I said, our engine is in the cloud, so cloud usage is something relatively new, at least, I guess, for air transport and ATM systems. So each country has their own rules and regulations, so that would have to be tackled. If the system has been given the rules, the protocols to be used, and someone doesn't use it correctly, who is to blame in that case? And then comes all the part of certification. We've got a new process, a new technology, and it has to be certified some way. The encryption, the transmission, and all that. And then, as I said, these secret shares, the small little pieces of secrets, they're not a complete set of, it's not an actual data, it's not an actual input, it's just a piece that actually doesn't represent anything, but it's part of some sensitive information that might have some owner. And lastly, the legal challenges we think we faced in the case that this actually goes live in a big scale, especially for slot trading. What we propose is something completely different to how it works right now. So we're talking about a change of the whole market regulation. We're talking about European law. It's not only each country, but obviously you need to coordinate all the laws in the market. You need to coordinate access, authorizations. As I said, the referee, this person, this entity that's outside that doesn't have any of the data, but is kind of there to say, okay, start the auction and stuff like that. We need a legal entity to do that. And then more in a technical point of view, we've got database access, you've got firewalls, you've got quite a few things there. So to conclude, I would like to add that this is an ongoing research and development project in which we're sure there'll be thousands of more liabilities. And well, after being here, many of them that we hadn't even thought have come to mind, obviously. And well, I hope you all can help me a bit with our doubts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vaishali, for this overview of your project. Of course, it's evident that it's early stages for your project, and also this is witnessed by the high level of the legal issues, the legal challenges that you identified. But I found it interesting that you already identified those issues during the design process, meaning that in a sense they are important for you and you are applying this way of thinking. Now we move to the second speaker, which is Damiano Taurino from Deep Blue. Vaishali, of course, left a lot of questions for us. Damiano will do the same, and at the end there will be a few time for you to try to support them. We decided to give first space to the presentations and then just have one session of discussion.
Thank you, Paola, and thank you all of you for being here. And I will try to be very short and brief, and I have exactly 16 words in my presentation, so I try to be very, very fast. ProGA is SESAR WP project. It is ProGA stands for probabilistic 4D trajectory of light general aviation operations. The concept of 4D trajectory is quite different from the SESAR one, but we will see it during the presentation. In fact, the main objective of this project is to study the feasibility of a system that is able to automatically predict the future traffic picture in a certain area, and so by identifying some flight corridors and volume of operation, and then we will see later what it means. The consortium is led by NLR, which is a very big research center from Netherlands, and the partners are Deep Blue and ONERA, that is another very big research center from France. I will try to explain the project by using a story. The story will be composed of 3 parts of a light general aviation flight: the planning phase, the flying phase, and the after flight phase, and we will see how the tool that the project wants to develop can support the pilot in all these phases. We will try to put also some keywords, and they are ordered by color. In orange you will see the user needs that are addressed. In green, the solution that we are proposing, the approaches that we are proposing. In red, we will see the benefits, especially for the safety. And in blue, we will see the challenges that the project has to tackle. So, we are talking about general aviation pilot, light general aviation pilot, so private pilots. And here we try to identify some of the main user needs for these pilots. All this presentation is from the side of the pilot. We have seen yesterday with Mr. Smith from NATS the position of the ANSP with regards with general aviation. Now we are on the other side, from the pilot side. So we have this Captain Massimo, that is our pilot in the project. He wants to fly, and he wants to fly in a Class G airspace, so without the aim of the traffic control. He is the only responsible for separation from the other aircraft, and he wants to fly in VFR, so with following the visual flight rules, so without the aim of instruments on board. And he wants to be free. In 2 senses, he wants to be free of flying wherever he wants, because he can do it. Also, under certain conditions, he can also fly without presenting an official flight plan, without sending it to the authorities. And he wants to fly safe, obviously. And the first thing he wants to do is planning his flight. Obviously, he is going to plan his flight in his living room, that is his planning room, because he is a private pilot. And he wants to use something that's very similar, very familiar for you. That's a tablet. And basically, we have a lot of apps for tablets up to now, and also yesterday Mr. Smith talked about this SkyDemon. That is really a very good application, but it is not the only one, obviously, to support the pilot. In the planning phase, usually these apps are really useful because they present the geography of the airspace, they present the NOTAM, so the information for the pilots, and all the information, the geographic information. What is not present in these apps is the traffic that the aircraft is going to meet during his flight. So we want to support the pilot in the planning phase by presenting him some hotspots. We have defined these hotspots. These hotspots are basically some areas where it is likely that the pilot will meet other traffic. So if he knows that under certain conditions, like weather conditions or season in the year, some areas are really crowded, it may be that he decides to not fly there. So, during the planning phase, our system is basically able to manage two kinds of data. One is the historical data, so the historical log of flights in a certain area, in a certain season, over a certain airport, and to merge, to fuse this data together with the planning coming from other users that are doing the same as Captain Massimo. They planned their flight, they have submitted it to the system, so the system will know that at a certain hour in the day and in a year, a certain number of pilots are going to fly. So, in that area. So here we have identified a main, obviously a main challenge for the pilots, that is the acceptability. It seems to be quite in contrast with the idea of being free, submitting a planning. But if we will try to convince pilots that it is it is good for them. So. Basically, here we are using the statistical analysis of the historical data and the fusion with the data submitted by the user to provide the likely traffic statistical traffic picture that the pilot is going to meet. Then, after the planning, he will fly. During the flight, what we are able to add to what is now present in the market, what we would like to integrate with the commercial solutions, are the possibility of visualizing the other traffic on the device, and to providing a better situational awareness for the pilot, and to avoid potential conflicts. What we are doing here is strictly, obviously, bound to the fact that the pilot should be cooperative. So the other pilots should have something on board that is able to emit the position. It's the same problem that we have seen yesterday. If the other aircraft are not sending their position, they are completely invisible for the system. So it will be possible visualizing them on the device. So here is the first big issue that we are grounded on the assumption that the other aircraft are cooperative. But it is not sufficient showing the traffic, because we know in that case that some aircraft are in some places, but we still don't know what the other aircraft are going to do. If we are talking about a short-term prediction, the problem seems quite simple, because we can simply reproject the trajectory of the aircraft on a straight line and assume that in the next few seconds the aircraft is not going to turn on to make maneuvers. If we try to do something not on the short term but on a longer term, we cannot assume that, because we cannot assume that the aircraft will continue to go straight. It may turn or change altitude. So we can solve this problem by using two approaches. The first approach is trying to is basing on the intent of the pilot. If the pilot has provided an intent of his flight, something like a flight plan, but an internal flight plan, we will be able to predict the position of the aircraft in the next steps of the flight. But it may be also the case that the pilot has not submitted his flight plan. So in that case, we cannot know a priori what it is going to do. But in that case, we decided to use a different approach that is based on a statistical analysis of the previous flights over a certain area. So here is a brief image of the system, but basically what we want to show here is that we have to make a realistic or likely to make a likely picture of the of a long-term evolution of the traffic, we should use other data that are not available in the system. So what we want to do is trying to make to foresee the traffic basing on the behavior of the general aviation pilots in the same area in the past. So if we are able to access to a database of previously flown flights over a certain area, we will be able to construct something like this picture. In this picture, we have these lines that the black lines are some flights that have been previously collected. So if we have a certain number of flights, historical flights over 2 airports in this case, we are able to make some statistics on them. And in that case, the blue lines and the red lines represents the statistical representation of the previously flown routes. So when the blue lines are denser, the probability that a flight will fly over that route will be higher than when the blue line are more sparse. So in this case, we are able to identify that we have 2 very dense spots in red. Obviously, they are the 2 airports, so they are really, really dense. And we can also identify some corridors that link the two airports. And so we decided to call them flight corridors and volumes of operations. A volume of operation is an hotspot, is a place where, and they are the circle you can see in the map, while the straight lines are the flight corridors. So basically, we are able to identify some of the most probable behavior of this general aviation flight, so to provide the pilot with a picture of the traffic on a longer term. Obviously, this picture is not granted. It is just a statistical projection of the data we have. So it is if we visualize the traffic, the future traffic on the device, it is based on an uncertain information. So what we would like to show to the pilot is a distribution of probability that some areas will be flown by other aircraft. So a statistical representation of the next traffic. It will be something like when you use Google Maps with the traffic option. If you go there now, you can see also the traffic in the next 3 hours. How do they do that? That because they collect data about the traffic, and they are able to provide you with a traffic picture in the next hours. Obviously, it is not an exact provision because it may happen that the traffic will not be so, but it is a collection of historical data, and it is an information that can be used to plan our journey. After the flight, the pilot have the option to send the recorded track of its flight to the system, so that the system is able to collect the data and to make statistics on that. The other solution is that something on the ground will record the flights, but in that case we need a ground infrastructure like Flight Radar 24. So otherwise, if we are able to convince pilot to send their flight track after the flight, we will be able to collect flight data without recording them by the ground, and also some privacy issues will be solved. This approach is useful both for powered aircraft And for gliders, in the case of gliders, the volumes of operation are really important. Here in the map you can see something where some gliders are present. The gliders use thermals to lift, so when they meet a thermal, they do these circles to go to gain altitude. So in that case, our system could be able to provide the other pilots with the information that in that place a lot of gliders are flying, so that part of the airspace will be really busy, will be occupied by gliders. So at the moment we are able to produce these very nice pictures, but we still do not have a prototype HMI for the pilot, and we are developing it now in order to be able to validate the concept with the pilots by means of the simulation, interviews, and observations. Obviously, the main performance area that we want to cover in the project is the safety, because what we want to avoid is mid-air collision between general aviation flights. So part of the project will be devoted to understand which are the real benefits on the safety. Obviously, we have a problem of social acceptance because we are tracking flights, and we are not sure that the pilot want to be tracked. Also because it may happen that when flying they infringe some airspace, or they do something that cannot be done. So it may be the case that they do not want to be recorded while flying. And the last open question is about the certification issues. If we want to put this system within the cockpit, it obviously needs to be certified. Otherwise, if we want to bring a tablet on board with this decision support system and using it like an electronic flight bag, so just support for the pilot, it might be the case that a certification is not needed, but we have to study, and it's part of the question that I would like to discuss with you.
Thank you very much, Damiano. The approach also in this case is very practical, it seems to me. And so I think they both left a number of questions. They opened a few points for a possible discussion with you. So now the floor is for the audience. If you want to give your feedback to them, to their questions, or simply to the concepts that they presented, it's more than welcome.
I have a question possibly for both participants and also for both speakers, and also potentially for some of the legal people in the audience as well. What about off-designed use of a product? So you have your products that you're developing, but inevitably people will use a product for something that it wasn't designed for. So I know from my experience in collision avoidance, some people have used it for all sorts of things, including getting closer to other aircraft to be able to take pictures of it, for good reasons, such as wanting to know the best time to talk to air traffic control and not disturb them. Also, there have been sort of neutral uses of it, which have been, for example, just wanting to know where they are in the queue before landing. So you can have positive uses that are off what you've designed the system for. You can have neutral cases, and you can have positively bad cases. Now, obviously, somebody who's doing the positively bad things, there's the legal liability. They're clearly going to be liable for doing something it wasn't designed for, or are they? We hear of people in the United States that are running and with a fridge on their back, and they sue the fridge manufacturer. Also at the other end, if you're doing something that is clearly beneficial, but you haven't been authorized to do it, there isn't the standard for it, are you going to be found criminally guilty in such a situation, even though you're actually doing something that's actually very good? So the question is to make it sort of a little bit, actually turn it into a question, is have you thought about these types of non-standard uses of the technology that you're developing? That's to the presenters. And then a question perhaps wider to the legal people. What do you think the implications are for the developers?
Yeah, basically, another thing that about our system, yes, it's evident. It may happen that someone will use it bad, and the main problem for us at the moment is understanding if the pilots really want to use it, because they are smarter than us, and they are more expert than us, and they told us that it can be used for for example, for tracking them. It can be used by the authority to understand if someone is doing something wrong, like flying over, I don't know, below a certain altitude where it is not, where it is not accepted, or infringe some airspaces. So we do not think about using that for this motivation, but it could happen. So basically what we are doing now, that we are at the stage 1 of EOCVM, is understanding if the system is really answering the needs of the pilots. And we are trying to understand where the boundaries of our system are, to avoid that it would be used for different with different ideas. So basically, we would like to understand that by doing some simulations and by producing questionnaires for the pilots. So we will include all these considerations within our questionnaires for the pilots.
Thank you.
Well, in our case, I think we've tried and solved this with two elements that I presented in the presentation. The first, the use of semi-honest parties. We believe the people or the entities that would use these new systems are really looking forward to use it, because they understand that it's a benefit for them to use the system this way. And that's why it's put there as semi-honest parties. They're not going to use it for a wrong thing, but they might look for loopholes. So we try not to leave any loophole in the development we're doing. Obviously, there will always be, we hope, there are very few. And the second part is the referee. You know, it's this external entity that is there just controlling that everything goes fine. Someone has to take that responsibility, and it's not going to be us. But that's a bit of the way that we think we could attack this bad use of the system.
I just wanted to know if there are legal people who want to reply. 1, 2, 3, okay. So, ladies first.
Well, just hearing your brief presentation of the legal considerations you've had so far, if I understand them correctly, I see maybe 3 different points in some sense. The first one is kind of your own question: who has ownership of the project, because you are a contracted entity, and this is a contractual intellectual property agreement, which in some sense is perhaps already dealt with in your contracts. So this is one side of the coin. The second one is how do the participants engage with each other? So, for example, any participant in the system, I would suggest, is a participant in a framework agreement, and you should vocalize and explicate that one for sure. In such an agreement, I think you should consider the ownership issue, for example, of data. These are things which can easily be agreed upon between the parties, so that's another issue. And then I was not sure if you had a third kind of element asking how can we implement it, what kind of international rules are there on slot trading. So I don't know if you studied the worldwide slot group standards by IATA, which account for 84% of traffic slotting, let's say.
Our question was more in the, it's research, we're thinking of a new way of doing things, and if the slot trading is accepted as a new way to do stuff, obviously you need to change that, the market, how it works right now. Right now it's only Heathrow that does auctions for their slots, but the rest of Europe, each airport does it in a different way. So we think that it would be necessary to do a change of regulation in the market for a fair market and a whole.
Yes, but I think you have, as a project, you have two approaches. You can go with the system, or you can go as a competitor of the system. So either you say, well, this is the standard and we're bringing to the market, because the current standard for slot allocation is quite detailed and the system is very, let's say, operative in many respects. So I don't know if you take into account, for example, the rules that they are making on slot allocations, for example, grandfathering rights, whether you take those things into account in your algorithm. So are you complying with the standard on slot trading or not?
I will. I think we not completely, because we more on the technical side of the project, but since there's still half project to go on, you told us we will definitely have a closer look to all the actual regulation now.
There are legal regulations on slot trading. For example, in the European Union, it's not a free standard. It's a really mandatory standard for specific airports. So those airports, in some sense, don't have a free choice as to which mechanisms they use. But I do think as a platform, there are rules also on how to change and bring proposals for different mechanisms. So I think you could incorporate their algorithms, let's say, into your cloud computing. But just saying that there is a certain extent of regulation already there, and I think it's good to consider it.
Thank you.
Okay, Gerard, then Giovanni, then Rita, and then I think time is over.
Yeah, okay, well, it's closely related to what Hannah had said, and I will put it a little bit in a polemic way and maybe heretic remarks. Why do you need any regulations here? This is just contract law. Yeah, it's up to you. It's up to the competition between platforms, and we have a lot. Yeah, sorry, we have a lot. We had a lot of models, let's say, and we don't need any we don't need any regulation here. It's business to business we're talking about, and even if you have business to consumer, you have the general consumer protection regulations which step in. Yeah, and if you want to do something, let's say, concerning liability of software developers, etc., at least we are not talking here about third-party liability. And as far as I've understood, it's not the case. Well, what the heck? Do it in the general terms and conditions of business to business. There's no problem at all. So they should deal with themselves. And there is a bulk of literature, for example, concerning your go-live problem. There's a bulk of literature concerning software development in complex projects concerning online platforms, practical literature, giving you model clauses, etc., and how to act. For example, I don't know exactly the term in English, it's called in German agile programming, yeah, literally translated. Perhaps the informatics or technicians may correct me here. In German it's called agiles Programmieren. Yeah? This is to say it's a very complex, multipolar development before you go live. And all the liabilities there are distributed. You have a more procedural approach, yeah, to the whole project, etc. Instead, let's say, of the old tradition of terms, etc. So, frankly, I don't see the problem. I really don't see the problem because there is, let's say, a lot of things that have been going on before. Platform trading is nothing new for us. It's more than a decade that we have B2B terms and conditions, and unless there are certain specificities in the air industry or airport, which I'm not aware of, maybe, but then you have to tell me why there should be some mandatory regulations concerning business. So I don't see any need for that.
Well, slot trading
Rita?
is regulated at European level, so this is simply a fact.
But even then, I would be heretic and to ask why there is a regulation of that. Maybe it's a little bit over-regulated.
Yes, but it was recently revised, very recently, this.
Okay.
But the more but the more important point is just that this is not in the way of this innovation. It is just a question how to implement it. This is not about liabilities or something like this. It's not something in the way, but there is already a kind of standard procedure, and you have to just look at the way in which you want to insert your system into a process that has already been going on.
Yeah, definitely. So I will give the floor to Rita, so to listen the EASA position on this.
Wait a second, EASA doesn't do slots. So it's not exactly the EASA position. I was just going to complement some of the observations that were made here. And I really like the tool that you conceived for slot trading. And we've been all talking about the question of design connected to liability. And here I really must insist that you have to look at the EU regulations for slots, because it's not just the grandfathering, it's the 80-20 rule, and it's the fact that it's a regulated market right now. So if that magnificent tool has not considered that, I don't think it can be used. Also in Europe, you just mentioned only Heathrow uses it, because there is a reason for that. Slot trading is that sort of thing, at least in Europe, not in the States, but in Europe, it's considered to be the kind of activity that everybody does it, nobody talks about it, and let's not regulate it. Having all that in mind, you have to take that into account in the conception of that tool. And the second observation would go regarding that general aviation tool that you're talking about. I would just like to understand this, I don't know how to call it, this machine, is it going to be installed permanently in aircraft or not?
Basically, we are not still at the moment of deciding where it will be installed, but we think that it will be installed on a tablet, and the only thing that will be really installed in the aircraft is, if needed, is the support to put it on board. But a lot of new cockpits are already equipped with this support. So
because it is, we're asking this because of the certification issue that you raised. Because if it is to be installed, any part in aircraft, then it is supposed to be certified.
Yeah, I know. By the way, we think that it really does not need to be installed on board, but it will be brought on board and put somewhere. Obviously, I think that we have to decide where to put it, because if you put it on the cockpit, it will be not the right place to put it. But if you have dedicated place to put it. It will not interfere negatively with the skill of the pilot to conduct the flight. So if the I don't know if the problem is reduced to where the software will be put, I think that the certification issues in that case will be not really an issue.
Yeah, it's a bit more complex than
that. Yeah, in fact. And I suppose it.
Mark?
Just a quick question. Why, or not why, do you know a FLARM?
Yeah.
What's the difference? What you're proposing?
The difference with FLARM is basically explained here. The third one is the FLARM approach. The FLARM is able to reproject the position of the intruder and to provide with information about a possible collision in the time frame of about 20 seconds. 20-30 seconds. While what we would like to do is to provide a medium or long-term picture of the traffic on a longer term. Obviously, what we would like to do is something that is well possible to integrate with FLARM or other collision avoidance systems in order to provide a picture of the traffic on a longer term, but to provide a real collision avoidance system like AGAS-X when the collision is closer.
So there is a last intervention from Giovanni in reply to Garfield, I think, and then we close the discussion.
Okay, I'm not very qualified to answering Garfield's question concerning unintended uses of a device. I think that in general, if somebody uses a knife, kills somebody, the producer, you don't want to sue the producers of a knife. The idea is that if there is a legitimate use for a device and the device is presented as being meant for this legitimate use from the producer, there should be no liability for different kind of uses. However, I think this assumes that really the device is divided for certain intended, useful, legitimate uses. Maybe, but I'm not sure about that, in case it would be possible to prevent the obnoxious uses with some adaptation of the devices and the producer doesn't do it, in this case, and this can be done without cost and without engendering the function of the device, there might be some kind of negligence in that. But this is what I would say. And concerning uncertified usage, also in this regard, there would be no liability on the side of the producer, I would say. But if something goes wrong, I think you may assume that there is a kind of, we'll say, statutory liability or something like that for the pilot or the operator using the device in an uncertified way and therefore violating the obligation to use only certified tools in the trade. Maybe a state of necessity, but then to be another matter.
How would that interact with strict liability? How would that interact with strict liability?
So unfortunately, we have to close this discussion. It was very interesting, and it is a proof for me that it's important to start discussing about legal issues as soon as possible, because you see there are different communities. And it's important that those communities start working together, speaking together. And of course, we offer you this platform in the network. If you want, you can use it.